Okay, I'll help for a minute.
I don't need it right now.
I'll help, it's fine. Okay. Amy, we'll show it after the class because we're already.
That's cool. Okay, that's cool. All right, welcome everybody today. Like she said, my name's Alana Lerwill. I don't know how long I've been quilting, but just a little quick intro. This was going to be a 3-generation quilt. Well, 4 generations technically, with my son likes to do a little quilting too. But my mom and my grandma, anyway, she was picking up my grandma, a little fender bender backing out of her driveway on their way here. So instead of going grandma, mom, me, we're going to go backwards. So look at all the secret. I think they'll be here in a little bit. So we'll just let them quietly sneak in the middle of my stuff, and hopefully they can be the grand finale instead of me. But I hope they make it here okay. But my grandma is 95. And she has 10 children and was from a family of 10, and I grew up under a quilt. Somebody always had a quilt on. So I know how to do hand piecing right now, but I can hand quilt, and I've done a lot of that. I love it. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of space. So I don't do it a whole lot anymore, having a quilt on all the time. But I did grow up loving that, and it's kind of in our blood. My mom's sister, so my grandma's other daughter, quite a bit younger than my mom, but is Bonnie, if you know Bonnie and Camille Fabrics. So that's my aunt and my cousin. So we're related to professionals. Not that we're professionals by any means, but anyway, so that's my claim to fame, as I know them. But I grew up sewing a lot, doing 4-H and all that kind of stuff, and just sewing. But I didn't really do quilts much. I did one in high school. It was pretty simple, not a whole lot to it, but I didn't really start quilting until years later. But I just love it. For me, it is, I guess, a lot like Don was saying earlier, it's about the process. And for me, it's therapy. And I just love the therapy that comes from it. I always tell my husband, I can just go, it's a lot cheaper than therapy to buy fabric. So that's what I tell him. And I tell my mom, I said, I can always tell how stressed I am by how many quilts I put out. Because I know I'm hiding and in my sewing room from all the things I really should be doing. But anyway, when I first started out, there's a couple of designers and tutorial, I guess, online things that really started me going. Somehow I stumbled on Jenny Doan from Missouri Star Quilt Company and started watching her tutorials, and she just made everything seem so easy and doable. I would watch her do a tutorial. It wasn't even really much of a pattern. If you just followed her instructions, you could just make the quilt. You didn't need the pattern. She would show you how to do a block, and then pretty soon here's the whole quilt. And everything she described was simple. And she just made it seem like, it doesn't have to be so stressful. And so I started dabbling and watching her quilts, and the patterns were free. And so that made it really fun too. And so I just started doing a lot. So some of the first quilts I'm going to show you are all ones that she did. And then because Bonnie and Camille designed fabric for Moda, I knew a lot about Moda fabric. And at the time they had a Moda's Bake Shop. It was its own website. Now if you go to I think I typed it in here. If you actually go to the Moda website, to their fabric store, there's a tab there that has inspirations and resources. And if you go underneath that, now they've listed their Moda Bake Shop underneath there. So you can go there, and they have tons of free patterns. It's basically like a blog post, and they feature different designers and different patterns that are free and tutorials. And usually there's pictures and step-by-step instructions. And I was like, okay, I need somebody to hold my hand, help me through all this. And that's how I followed those 2 things and got lots of patterns and ideas. And it just made it seem so doable that was kind of where I got my inspiration from. But I spent hours watching tutorials and doing all that stuff, and that's what really got me going. And you just try with something simple, and then wow, that worked, and try something else. And when my great grandmother on my dad's side of the family passed away, I decided we were kind of kindred spirits, because she had closets and closets full of quilt tops made. And I found myself making all these beautiful quilt tops, fold it up and sit it in the corner, fold it up and sit it in the corner, and I had piles. And then I met sweet Susan Hansen. And she is such a dear friend. I'm going to cry if I even think about how much I love her. Sorry, I didn't know I was going to do that. But you'll see when we see my quilts. Susan quilts all my quilts. And I'm happy she's here today. Gee, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's start the quilts. I don't need them all anymore. We all love Susan. She's awesome. Oh, anyway, so she took my quilts and turned them into works of art. And I just love that when I finally realized I could give away that piece of it, I realized I didn't have to do every step in order to enjoy the process. And because I would do the piecing and love it, and I would try to quilt it on my machine at home and ruin it, in my opinion. And so I just had a hard time getting through that. I didn't love the quilting part. So when I learned I could turn that over to somebody else and still, she would finish and I'd get it back as like Christmas morning and oh, look at this quilt, it's so beautiful now. So I just love that part of it. So if anybody wants a good quilter, talk to Susan.
Tell her to stand up and wave.
Yeah.
Yes, stand up and wave, Susan. Everyone.
I'm Susan.
She was a New Nail. She's a sweetheart, and she grew up in my home ward, so I've known her for lots of years. But okay, so my quilter friend helped her hold her uppers. I can't hold up quilts, and I can't hold it and talk at the same time anyway. This was one of the first patterns I did. This stack here on the table to start with, these are all patterns from Missouri Star Quilt Company. You can look them up online, they're easy. This one's called Hot Crust Buns. And it was a pattern by Wendy Pulling. And this one was on Moda Bake Shop, actually. I lied, I thought that one was in Missouri, but it's actually Moda. It's super fun and easy, and you basically take a layer cake, you take 4 fabrics, stack them on top of each other, and you just whack them in half at any angle that you want to, and then you just fill in sashing in between. Then you stack those same 4 up again, whack it again, and then fill in the sashing the other way. It's 1.5 inch sashing, and then it just makes sort of like a window pane, like a stained glass window look effect, and it's super cute and super fast. And someday I need a little girl grandbaby. See, I have all boys, so I like to sew girl quilts. It's my attempt to try to touch some feminine stuff in my life once in a while, I think. This next one is a Dresden coin quilt, and this one you use your Dresden ruler, and you just turn them every other direction and stack them on top of each other and sew them together. It is such a simple one. This is a Missouri Star pattern. The fabric is Varsity by Sweetwater. I really like Sweetwater's fabric. And it's super, super simple. Just stack them in rows, sash it.
I'll look up the numbers around.
I keep getting in this. They don't need to see me in the camera. They can just see the quilts. But that one was a really fun. And I used the Varsity fabric because I think the Dresden stack coins look like pennants, like a Varsity pennants too. And then the backing is this really cute, it has numbers and stuff all over it. So when Susan and I picked out the quilting has numbers all over it. So it has like 3, 5, 6, 9, like, so the quilting are kind of like Varsity numbers or something like that on the back. So that was a fun one of my favorites. This next one is called a dot to dot. And this was a tutorial, Jenny Doan's daughter did it, and it's basically a layer cake and charm pack. So you do a 4 patch with the charm pack squares. You put a 3.5 inch or a 3 inch circle inside the charm pack. And then you do have to trim your layer cake down just a hair so it's 9.5 inches. So so it'll pair up with a 4 patch. And then you do an 8 inch circle. And I just did the iron-on pillow on the back. I have an Acu cutter, so that was my, like, I don't know if I ever do all those circles on my own, but I just run it through my cutter and cut out the circles, ironed them on. It was really fast and simple, and then did a blanket stitch. So I guess that was probably one of my first applique. That was probably one of my first applique attempts at something, just the raw edge. And then I thought when I cut those circles out of a layer cake, and then I left all the corners. What am I gonna do with these stacks and stacks of corners? I can't throw them away. So I made up my own quilt. So this was my first attempt at making my own pattern, and I took all the scraps from that quilt, and those triangles came out of the corners where I cut the circles out of that one. So and I call this one Sawtooth Junction. So don't throw your scraps away. That's one thing I learned at these classes, is how to use your scraps. And it was kind of fun. Good use of negative space on that one. It's just a squares, like a diamonds, like a diamond inside of a diamond. It's all on a Susan's are computerized, so you can pick up the patterns that way. This is a Missouri Star pattern too. Really, really simple. It's called Prairie Flowers, but it's one of my favorites. I would do this. This is one I would do again. I love this pattern. It's fast and easy. Yeah, that turned out really big too.
It's really big.
It's got pretty special too. Prairie Flowers. So the backing is piece.
Very coordinated.
But again, it was just simple. These are just layer cake cut up into 4. You can use charm squares, and they're just snowball corners. So they're really, it's a simple pattern to do. And a little bit of cornerstones in the sashing. The fabric on that one is called Citron Twist, but a lot of these, the fabric is old enough, you probably won't ever be able to find those again.
And she labels them off.
Oh, yes, I have.
By the way.
I learned how to do quilt labels from the Shelley Quilt Show. And because we had a class. Don't not label all of your, you should always label all your quilts. too. It's just a,
We'll show you on the next one.
it's just a little professional thing that happened. This one is called A Square in a Square, and this was just a tutorial I watched online. I don't know if you did the tutorial, I can't remember, but it's a jelly roll quilt. You take one jelly roll, you sew in 3 strips together. You do a white and 2 colors, and then you cut it into 6.5-inch squares, and then you put 2 on top of each other, and you draw a line diagonally and sew on either side of the line like you would a half square triangle, and then you cut it apart. And when you cut it apart, you get one piece that has the white on the outside and another piece that has the white on the inside. So it's kind of reversed out, and then you just match them up into 4s. It's called Square in a Square, but you might be able to just look up the tutorial. It's pretty simple, but it was a fun one. And the Minky on the back, I don't know how I found Minky to match, but it's fabulous, and I love the stripy binding. Stripy binding is one of my favorite things to do. So this was another fun one from Missouri. It's called a Serendipity quilt. And Susan did a fabulous job. This one's such beautiful quilting on this one. I love it.
You're gonna hold it?
Oh, wow.
I got one side of it while she's doing the other. So you make this quilt by sewing strips together, and then you snowball this corner. You sew a square here and flip it back and then cut it off. Well, now you have all these strips that were cut off. So you make this quilt, and then you take the pieces cut off, and serendipitously you have another quilt. So the pattern actually creates 2. So that one was really fun because you get 2 quilts out of one situation. So that's why she named it Serendipity. But the quilting on that first one, especially in all the negative space, is so beautiful.
Show the back of yours is red.
Yeah, we did some of the borders in red, some of it in,
So fun.
excuse me, in the different colors of thread.
I don't know if I couldn't see in the camera. Hopefully you're all getting it.
Yeah, hopefully you can see it in my camera at home. This next one is a Starburst Dresden, and I'd never done a Dresden plate before. This is my first one. And they did this really cool technique of creating a starburst. So you put a folded triangle in between the blades when you do your Dresden blades together. And this is a kind of a 3-dimensional object that's just tucked in there. And it creates this fabulous starburst on top of it. Yeah, you gotta see the cool thing on the back. It's a Missouri Star Quilt Company.
We're moving. I know, Terry. It's so blank. I know. Sorry, people.
Sorry. I'm in the middle while I talk. Anyway, so you can see that white starburst in the middle, and then you just applicate this circle over the middle. It's a Missouri Star Quilt Company. You can just look up your Starburst Dresden pattern. That'll turn out really good.
I'm trying not to be.
Okey-dokey. Oh, okay, so here's our generation number 4. Every time I was sewing, my kids, I have 3 boys, they were always under my feet, always sewing, wanting to sew. So pretty soon it started little projects, bigger projects, and then my son says, I want to make a quilt for my bed. So we did this one, and he sewed this when he was about 11 years old. He pieced the whole thing himself and entered it in the fair. Of course, he did really well as an 11-year-old. And then Susan quilted these fantastic flames going up through it. So it's just your traditional houndstooth pattern, but super fun. So I'm gonna be proud of generation number 4. Okay,
Tip it down more. Get in the middle.
fix my microphone.
Down.
Sorry.
We keep blocking her though. Is that a problem?
No, we're here to see the quilt.
They don't want to see it. They want to see the quilt.
Just kidding.
So this pattern is
We
called,
need training before we start.
right,
Sorry.
this pattern is Ruby, Pearl, and Opal. It's a pattern by Little Miss Shabby, and the fabric is ruby, so I thought, what better pattern to use ruby on than Ruby, Pearl, and Opal? But it's Bonnie and Camille's fabric, and it's just a fun little window pane. quilt. Lots of fun sessions. The holiday. Yeah. This one is Vintage Holiday. It's also Bonnie and Camille's pattern and fabric. This is the first time I'd ever done a row by row quilt. So this is kind of fun. And to do the piecing to create shapes like Christmas stockings and Santa hats and all of the little row things. So that was fun because you don't get too bored with one block. You just do one row. But that was fun to piece the little shapes out like that.
Back is so cute.
The back.
What did you say the name is?
It's called Vintage Holiday. Bonnie and Camille. And then the big Norway quilt up there on the upside down. Yeah. So this one is a pattern by Camille. So I kind of put all my Bonnie and Camille stuff together. This was fabric I found that's called Nordic Stitches. And this is a king size, so it's really big. But the pattern is called Norway. And so what better when I found this fantastic fabric that reminds you of old Nordic sweaters, you know, with the reindeer and the patterns. I'm like, oh, I just have to do the Norway pattern. And so you almost have to read far away to kind of see the snowflakes because they're so big. Kind of digitally, but anyway, that was a fun one, and it turned out to be really big. The backing has that really cute Norway fabric on it.
Norway.
The pattern is Norway, and the fabric was Nordic Stitches. This is the first, that other one had a little applique on it. This is the first big applique project I did. It was a quilt kit. It's called Robots, and it was Amy Bradley designed, and I am so in love with this quilt. Every time I see it, I just giggle. It's so fun. And it was a quilt kit that I got, and it had all the fabric, and it was really, really fun to do. The backing is the fun binding, the polka dots, like the whole thing just makes me happy. And Susan did the funnest quilting. If you look in the sashing in between, there's screwdrivers and wrenches and hammers and all these fun tools. And they're just really fun. That was my first attempt at an applique something. And this one is called Capri Daisies. It was designed by Adorn It, and it's the Adorn It Capri fabric. It was a fun one. I bought the book and the fabric at Porter's years ago. And
What's it called?
Capri Daisies. Adorn It. Yeah, that's so fun. I'm actually had so much of that fabric left over because I love it so much. I'm in the middle right now making another quilt with all of the scraps from that.
Oh, it's not black quilting.
We just did the daisies, and the border is in the daisies, so on the back you can kind of see the gray daisies. And the next one comes as a product of the Shelley Quilt Show. So years ago we were here and Dawn did a class on Heartstrings Quilts. So you guys probably seen lots of heartstrings. She said, I made this quilt, I got to the end and I cut so many, I had enough scraps to do a second quilt. Who wants it? And man, my arm flew up so high, so fast about jumped out of my seat. She threw me the bag. So these are all the scraps that were Dawn's scraps that I turned into a fun quilt that did a heartstrings. I have gotten so much from this Shelley Quilt Show over the years. It's fun to come and give back a little bit and share. Lots of things and these quilts are things that I've learned here. This next one, I was super grateful for my AccuQuilt cutter. It had 300 little squares to snowball in the corners. That's called Zap. But I really had fallen in love with black and yellow and gray. And so all those little ones have a square sewn on the corner and then turned back. So I was happy to have a cutter, and I cut them out in about 15, 20 minutes instead of hours and hours cutting 3-inch squares. So it's called Zap, and it's from a pattern book called Simply Fat Quarters. It was designed by Sarah Price.
They went.
And I haven't done the gnome one is the next one. And I haven't done too many panel quilts, not usually a huge fan, but when I saw this quilt kit, I love gnomes. I'm a gnome freak. So I had to do a panel quilt, even though I don't 100% love panels, but Everything on this quilt is so funny because it's summertime. So usually you see gnomes at Christmas. So they got a snail pulling their camper, and then there's fireflies everywhere, and these barbecue grill is an acorn, and and the quotes are funny, hanging with my gnomies, and no one is cooler, and Noma stay on the water. She's doing yoga on her board.
Did you say it was a kit?
It was a quilt kit, but and then the back has all these fun summer gnomes on the back of it. The pattern was designed by Heidi Priedmore for blank quilting. The fabric is Hugo Edwin's. But I bought the quilt kit on Etsy, and I saw when I was looking up all the stuff to remember what it was, there were still a few of these kits left on Etsy if anybody wants to do that. This one is a Christmas tree one. This is a geometric Christmas tree pattern. It was a free paper piecing pattern by Center Street Quilts. And I had never done a whole bunch of paper piecing before, so I wanted to try it out. And I really love the wooden buttons for the trees. And the border was my own design. So that was a really intricate border, probably the hardest border I've ever done to date. So that was tricky. But it turned out fun. I designed it on my EQ8 software and the border in, and somehow made it work. But the buttons add. So that was a fun paper piecing one to do. And pretty simple.
Except
Yeah.
for
The border was not simple. Everything else was pretty simple. That was not the word. And this one is called Clementine. This is a quilt that was it was a quilt along block of the month kind of a thing. And Fat Quarter Shop put it on for the St. Jude's Children's Hospital as a charity quilt. The fabric is Mama's Cottage by April Rosenthal. And it's fun because there's a small and a big block of every single one. So you look at a little one here, and somewhere else in the quilt is the big version of it. So you get a big one and a little one, and then the little ones are set on point. So that was kind of fun. And that pattern is still available if you go to the Fat Quarter Shop and look up the Clementine quilt along. You can find all those patterns for that in there. So it's the sailboat one is next. Yeah. This is a pattern from the pattern basket. They have one called Boat Day, or they have 4th of July Boat Day. So I did the 4th of July. The regular one doesn't have the pinwheels. And a bunch of this is Bonnie Camille fabric, and some of it is stuff I curated on my own. It's just a bunch of scraps and stuff I had. And I love the quilting and the sailboats that we did. And with the white thread, they really caught in the borders. It's called 4th of July Boat Day. Or if you don't want to do the pinwheels, you can just do Boat Day, and it doesn't have the pinwheels in the rows, but and the backing is fun. Flannel. So we're doing the class later today about low volumes. This was my first attempt at doing low volumes. Ollie and Nevy's quilt shop had a block exchange, and so I decided to participate. Scrappy is not my game. I don't play well. I get too caught up in the microcosm of the individual blocks, but when they're done, I love the macro view of them all. They turned out, it's my favorite, but it was hard sewing the little ones together. But it was big block exchange that we did back and forth with other people. And so it really added to the scrappiness of it because it wasn't all just my scraps. And then I did scrappy binding around the outside in flannel. And there's a big flannel scrappy piece chunked into the back too. But it made me fall in love with low volumes. I want to do more. That was fun. It turned out really fun. That one is cut from the Sisterhood of Scraps book. It's designed by Lisa Alexander. And it's called Friendship Starter. So this is the most recent quilt I just got finished. In fact, I had it done and Susan finished it so I could have it for the show. And then I hurt my finger. So my mom, the 11th mother, bound it for me so that it was finished. So I did all the binding on it. This one is, it's called America's Quilters Stitch Along. Lisa Von Jean from the Primitive Gatherings, which this is all her fabric, did this quilt along. She did it as a charity quilt for Hogs for Heroes, where they give Harley Davidsons to war veterans. And they did it as a charity quilt, and that was really fun. And she does a whole process where she starches with really heavy starch all of the fabrics and the fat quarters before you start going. And when you're doing little teeny tiny piecing like these kinds of things, it really made it go really well because the pieces are super crisp. They have no shrinkage. And it's a technique I never tried before, but I really quite liked it, especially if I do little piecing again. I think I would do that again. Anyway, learn lots of new techniques.
Share about borders, how you.
Okay, so the other thing I learned from her, it's like she did tutorials for every block. I thought, I'm just gonna do it exactly how she does it so I can learn some new things instead of gravitating back to what I always do. So when she went to put the borders on, and especially the sashings and stuff, I know people struggle with how do you not have wavy borders. She took her fabric, and say you have a big length of fabric, I think the borders were 75 inches or something. She just snipped right above the selvage and just ripped the whole selvage all the way off. Went up 7 inches because she needed a 6.5 inch border, made a snip and just ripped and ripped and ripped all the way down. And it pulls, and ripping it rips it on the straight of the grain because it'll tear right along the straight. And then you could just fold that big long strip up, you know, in a fourth or whatever, so it fits on your cutting board. And it was square and straight. You just trim off the fray and get it exactly the length you wanted. And the borders didn't wave and they were straight. I would do that again in a heartbeat, especially when you're trying to cut a great big long 70-inch piece. So that worked really well. She didn't rip the little chunks between the flags to the side. So she ripped a 10.5 inch piece and then just sliced them into the little pieces. But for the big long stretches, that was slick.
So like.
Kind of made you nervous.
7 inches and you just.
And just tear the whole thing. So she'd tear it about a 1/2 inch bigger than the cut she needed. But man, that was slick. And then they were straight, all the grain, and you're not having to worry about how it's cut off the bolt or whatever. So new technique. You can look up Lisa Von Jean and look at the tutorials for that. She walks you through all of how to do that. But that was something new that I learned. Go ahead. These are from here on out. These are all patterns that I created. This one was just kind of an early one. It was like, oh, I'll take a rail fence block and a block and a block and a 4-patch and just kind of alternate them. I just love the fabrics. So I was like, what do I do with this fabric? So I just made something up to do with it. I didn't give it a name or anything. And I just did alternating sort of rectangle bricks around the outside. This one I call Friendship and Freedom. I usually don't really like friendship stars, but it creates a secondary friendship star, which made me laugh because it's probably my least favorite star. I love stars, but friendship stars feel like, well, they're only 4 points. They're missing some. But this creates kind of in the negative space in the middle creates a friendship star here as you put the blocks together. So I thought, well, we'll call it Friendship and Freedom. But that was one of my early attempts at making a quilt pattern. So and that was just fabrics that I chose. It wasn't a particular line, just found something to go together.
Are we not done?
Jeannie's arms are tired.
They're heavy and they're big quilts. I don't do a lot of small stuff yet.
She was talking, so I thought we were done.
I don't have a lot to say about that one. This one is one of my favorites. I call this one Foxy Loxy from a childhood book that we had as a kid. I made this pattern actually twice. The first time I designed it to be pieced in bigger chunks of fabric of like bigger sections. And then we had the class with Susan Geddes where she taught us how to use the easy piecing grid, Carmen Geddes, how we do the piecing grid. So I redid the pattern again. So all of it's in, this is a 1 inch finished square. And so I designed it to go both ways. So I actually have both patterns designed, but this was fun. I wanted to try her technique. And then I had to put fox fur on the back, you know.
And it looks like a tree.
Oh,
So it looks like tree bark. That is one of my favorites. Still need a little grandbaby to wrap that one in. And then this last one is called of my pattern designs. This one, I guess if Don says if you look at a picture and figure it out yourself, you designed it. So this was a picture that I loved the setting for. So I call it Starry Cabin Nights because it's based on a log cabin and then they're sashing. So I had to figure out all the angles and try to figure out the lengths and how to make that star look like a star when it all comes together. It was a little tricky. Mom helped me a little bit. I'd be like, help me, how do I get these angles right?
Oh, that's gorgeous.
But I just love the stunning red with the gray, and it was one I was really proud of.
So did you sell patterns?
I'm trying to get to the point where I can get to like have a professional PDF done. So like, I have all my notes, my computer notes, but I'm going to get there soon. That's my next step is to try to take the patterns and get them where I could actually sell them. Let's see.
Yeah,
But I'm happy to share if you want to try some. And then grab my throw bag. We're gonna kind of go about this a little bit backwards. This was gonna be after my mom, but we'll just do this to segue into her stuff. Let me start with this one first. So for my birthday this year, because my mom loves me so much, this is my cousin Camille from Bonnie Camille. This is her pattern swoon. And my mom made me a swoon quilt for my birthday. I was so excited. So I will show you her first quilt. There you go. And she knows I put Minky on the back of everything, her flannel, so it has gorgeous Minky to cuddle with on the back.
Oh, well, my birthday's in April.
His birthday's in April, in case you're wondering. So that was my wonderful birthday present. So the other two quilts I have to share are ones my mom and I did together. So we're starting to play together like Dawn and her sister. So I don't know how she wants to start hers. I'll let her come up here with this, and I can show them when she gets to hers if we don't want to show them first, if you don't know where they're at in her stack.
I did once.
That's okay. So now I've been calling my mom. I found a pattern, we need to play. Let's do this one together. And so the first one we did together this is a quilt by Bonnie and Camille. It was Bonnie's pattern. It's called Quilt Day. And I decided I was either gonna love her or hate her by the time we were done with these scissors. Oh my gosh. Well, so there was a kit, so they're pretty similar. But don't look too close at the scissors. They're not all identical. They were tricky. But it was really fun to do, and we just agreed, I'm always working on a million other things at the same time, so we agreed we would only sew on this kind of when we were together for the most part. So it would just give us together time, mother and daughter, to sew together, and we just worked on them, cut them out together. It's so much fun doing them.
Mine hangs in my sewing room.
Yeah, we both hang them in the sewing rooms. So that was such a fun project. Then I found a picture of this one. This is I have notes about who actually did this pattern. If you like this pattern, it's actually called Counting Sheep by the Wool and Needle. But I looked at the pattern and said, I could draw a sheep. So we just drew a sheep and drew a sheep head, and we drew a bunch of different bodies and just did it on our own because it wasn't that complicated. But so we both did sheep quilts. And I've had my eye on this one for a while because of Michelle. Michelle had the pattern to start with. Then I saw this fabric in the fabric store. And I called Mom and I said, took a picture and I said, I have to do this pattern. I found the perfect backing. So the backing inspired me to go after the sheep quilt again. And it was so fun.
What is the fabric?
Quilted with the curly wool.
It's all wool.
So this is all wool. The sheep are actually all wool. The backgrounds are flannel. So it was all wool that we curated from. What?
Do you have woolies?
No, that's
That's
Primitive Gatherings. Farmhouse Flannel 2 is the line of fabric that's in the background and the borders. And these are all from sweaters and skirts and stuff that we repurposed because we learned here about wool in a wool class.
How did you know?
So that's all from DI and thrift storing. And
So
so I share my wool stash with my mom. She's like, those are sweaters? What?
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was really fun to play. That's my first play in wool. So let me introduce my mom and my grandma. If you want to come just stand up here for a minute, Grandma, you probably don't want to stand the whole time, but this is my sweet grandma. You have to stand up here so you're in the camera because they're showing up online.
Oh.
This is my grandma, Phyllis Moss, and my mom, Alana Bowen. So here's our 3 generations. I didn't drag my son to the show, he's number 4, but I did show his quilt.
It's gonna be fun because we have her mother's quilt.
Oh, sweet. So my great grandma. So that'll be fun. We'll let her sit, but I won't make her stand up here to hold up quilts. But you can use this mic, or I can use this. Wrap it around your neck.
I've never done mine. Okay.
Can you just tell us what to do?
Okay.
We're here for you.
All right, this isn't how we planned, but we figured it out.
And so you just,
Oh, I'm still here.
whatever
Okay.
shows up on the computer is But you don't have to be online.
She probably already told you, Bonnie is my sister and Camille is my niece. And that's her daughter, Bill. Bonnie is her daughter too. So anyway, let's just start with that one. This is a kit that my mom bought when she came to the quilt show one time. Okay, and it's I pinned this on here so I remember. It's the 10 Sisters Quilt Smart. Anyway, but it's that same where you iron on the pellon and you have squares and anyway. So anyway, Mom didn't want to do it, and so I don't think I can do that anymore. So anyway, she gave it to me, and I tried to make it something out of it. But anyway, yes, I did. I hand quilted it. I do a lot of hand quilting because I grew up doing that, and I like to hand quilt. So my daughter.
I do. I like doing it. I just don't have time to do it.
I just enjoy doing it. Now that I'm very tired, I just enjoy it. So, the next one is. Bonnie had given me some scraps she didn't want anymore, so I just thought I'm gonna play with it. So I made this little lap quilt, and I just call it pillows and pin quilts, and I put flannel on the back, and the grandkids snuggle up with it on the couch in the fall, and I just have it out in the fall. So it was just kind of a fun play thing. And I machine quilted in the ditch with that one, so.
Oh, thank you.
Just something I like to do. Okay. Let's see, the next one, okay, this one is Bonnie's pattern. I think it's called Lazy Days. And I had some scraps left over from something and I don't know, a bunch of stuff. So, and I think a lot of it is Bonnie's fabric, or not most of it. So anyway, that's another one that I just machine quilted because I wanted to. I don't know. I've been trying to figure out how to do machine quilting. I just enjoyed it, so that's a fun one. And that one is from a Fribble. I don't know if you know about the Fribbles tins. That was from a Fribbles quilt.
You won that here.
I did. Oh, I did.
You won that here.
I think I did.
The
Yeah.
10, yeah.
And I was trying to remember I can't remember the name of the fabric line, but anyway.
So cute.
Just fun little one.
It was a bind.
Yeah, it was a Bonnie.
Marmalade, maybe.
Yeah. It has oranges.
I took out the paper, here's my paper. This one's called Wildflowers, and I had a layer cake that I bought, I think, at one of the quilt shows. And so I just, it's Bonnie's pattern, but it's a different fabric line. And I just put that together, and Susan quilted it. So.
We don't want to work out for.
I'm good. I'm so good.
Arm workout so strong.
I haven't done this for years.
And we had to do a tree quilt one year for the quilt show. So I just did this wonky Christmas thing, wonky Christmas trees that I just had fun with. It's so easy. And then I just did the weight and quilting on it. It was easy. It was just fun. I'm not a serious quilter like my daughter, can you tell? I just play. Oh, that one, I kind of made it myself, just quilts I'd seen, and I had fabric, and Alana helped me find some more fabric to go with it, and I just call it window panes, but I like the little hedgehogs in it, and that's adorable. I think Susan quilted this one too, I'm sure she did. It's just a square and a four. So cute. Yeah, it has a little lamppost. Yes. You can look at it on the pictures in there. There's fun little things in there. So.
There's the back.
That's really cute.
This was another, what was it, layer cake I think I had, and I thought, what am I gonna do with this? And I had some navy, and I thought, okay, we'll put this together, and this is what I got. And I stitched in the ditch for that one too. It's just a really different color combination. It's not something most people would like, but I thought, why not? I kind of like this, so. My husband cannot do greens and blues together. He's got his crazy, but. I like it.
Can quilt it?
Oh, I didn't have that other one out of the bag.
Which one?
That one. Let me take it out. This quilt was, I think it's the first line that Bonnie and Camille came out with, the first fabric line that they came out with. And Bonnie had designed a pattern called Simply Sarah, which is my grandmother's name, my mother's mother. And so Bonnie designed the pattern, Camille and Bonnie designed the fabric. My mother helped me quilt it, and Bonnie helped me do some piecing together too. But anyway, some laying the blocks out. Anyway, I took it to the fair and I got grand champion on it. So I thought that was kind of fun. But it means a lot to me. I just call it my heritage quilt because it has so many family connections.
Are we behind?
No, okay, fine. This one is Bonnie's pattern called Beehive, and I just had some scraps left over from something else, and that's what I made out of it. So, anyway. And I have a wavy border, so I figured I gotta work on that. And I machine quilted that just with a little wavy thing on my sewing machine. Quilted it myself. So. This one is Bonnie's bow tie pattern. There's lots of bow tie quilts around, I guess, but it's fabric that I had. Lots of different pieces that I put together. And, I stitched in the ditch for that one too, but I really like that one. I just wanted the pink and the green together. It's just fun. I do big quilts once in a while too, but I didn't bring any because of the time we had. So. And
I don't know where you want to go.
Well, these three, because they're mine and the rest are mom's, so, yeah. This one I just called Sherbet, and I don't know why, it just struck me. And I like rainbow with that, just for fun. It was one of my earlier things that I was playing with.
So you machine quilt on your own domestic machine?
Yes, yes.
Which I think is
Yes.
such a talent. I can't do that.
Yes, you can. If you can do it, yes, you can. It has a deep throat on it, so it's really hard to manipulate all that fabric under there. It's hard.
It's hard.
So.
Do you start in the center of those blocks and go out, or do you go in? I think I started, I can't remember. It's been too long since I did it. I'm not sure.
She did a little of both. I'm following it in the back.
A lot of times people do start in the center and kind of go out from the center.
You mean the spiral inside?
Yeah, inside the block.
The spiral in the blocks,
And then she kept
outside in.
And then she did straight up blocks.
Yeah.
Do you want to know the pattern? I got it figured out.
Oh.
I'll tell you later.
Sometimes I'm just making it up as I go.
She did.
And I like yellow and gray, so I did this one, gave it to my son and his wife for their birthdays, because we like to do the parts there. So, and I'm working on I can't remember, I don't know. I think I just saw a picture of it and just did this. And it has a lot of half square triangles when you're done. So right now I'm working on a quilt a little one from the scraps of all those little half square triangles, but I'm just gonna do on the machine. So, and that one I hand quilted by myself. And then,
I want to see good hand quilting on it.
yes, that one. This one is the one I made from the scraps left over from the quilt I made for Alana for her birthday. I just got a little bit more fabric and put with it and used them up. Because I don't like a lot of scraps laying around. I'm very weird that way. Most people have piles of scraps. And show them the back what I did for the fabric on the back. That was some more of the leftover fabric. So,
Cute. Oh, that's cute. Fun.
Nice.
okay. Nice machine quilted that one. Now, these are mom's quilts. Do you want to?
You can use the microphone laying on the table if she wants to say something.
Here,
Turn it on. You can stay there if you want.
she can stand up too.
It's on, isn't it?
It is now.
Okay, this is a beautiful quilt. Hand quilted,
Flowers on it.
yo-yos. This, I think this is Bonnie's. Go ahead, Mom.
I was gonna say, I love to quilt, and this is one of Bonnie's patterns, and so.
All these little yo-yos that she made.
Right in your face.
So the basket is full of yo-yo flowers.
Yeah, that's just so yo-yo flowers.
Hand quilted, right?
Hand quilted, yes. Bonnie doesn't hand quilt.
Grandma.
Oh,
Grandma hand
do
quilt.
that so we don't drag it.
And this, one year for Christmas, Mom made, she has 10 children, so she gave each of us a quilt that she had pieced and hand quilted for Christmas. So, and I have this on my bed. I use this in the winter, so. And they were different colors. I don't remember. How many colors did you do, Mom? Green, red. So it's cherished.
That way? She even tripped with friends.
Trip with friends, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We learned.
I had 10 children, so I made 10 quilts one year.
Charlie doesn't have the best one. That one's
For Mom's birthday, which, does it say which birthday?
This was a
Happy birthday.
Grandma,
Was it her 80th or 90th?
we love you so much.
I think it was for her was it your 90th birthday?
90th.
Her 90th birthday, okay. Anyway, she had all of the families do a little block. And then Bonnie pieced it together and put it together and had it quilted for her. But it's a contribution from all the families. She's got a ton of grandkids and great-grandkids. So.
That's really pretty.
How many grands do you have, Mom? Do you remember?
How many grands?
Grandkids.
42 grandchildren and 180 great-grandchildren.
108 great-grandchildren.
And 4 great-greats.
And the last one is the one that you have to tell them about, Mom.
This is a quilt that my mother quilted for me. She had 11 children.
9 girls.
9 girls and 2 boys, and she made us all quilt. For quilting.
It's all hand quilted.
Is it Trico?
I don't know how old it is, but
Yes. It's sewn
It's
with
like
a sewing
embroidery.
machine. It's a sewing machine.
Shell.
No, it's a sewing machine scalloped.
Like a zigzaggy kind of?
Yeah, it's kind of a zigzaggy.
Like a zigzag only. It's
She did this cute scallop and then just cut.
Like a shell.
a shell pattern that you have on your sewing machine.
So what year was that?
She didn't look it up, but it had to have been
she passed away in
1970
70, and it was several years
before that.
before that.
Yeah. She made all of the kids for Christmas, so.
She taught me how to quilt.
But my mother is a beautiful hand quilter, and she can't do it anymore, but she did until just a few years ago, so. Anyway, I can turn time off. Okay.
Another great show. I love it. And, okay, I just want to make a couple comments because I've heard several people say yesterday and today, that's so intimidating. That's so intimidating. Okay. Everybody has their talents. Everybody does what they want. And if some of us are a little obsessive compulsive, that's our problem. Right, Alana? Right? So it's just you do it a little step at a time. And it's not like Don and I did all our quilts in the last 6 months. It's like years in the making. So in the years in the making, it evolves and it comes around. Don't be intimidated. Just do like Alana said, oh, look, I'm Moda and I learned this and learned that and learn new things every year and keep it going and keep learning. And then you find out you don't like paper piecing, you just cross it off your list. Don't have to do that anymore, you know? So whatever. So don't be intimidated. It's just for fun and this is joy and life and creative and we're told we're supposed to be creative and just be creative and do what you want. And if your creativity is following the pattern exactly, that's creativity. That's fine. That's perfect. You don't have to make up your own unless you want. Okay, that's my lecture for the day. So, we also, Jamie, would you grab that quilt from Mimi and let me tell about that? Remember a couple years ago, we did the Quilts of Valor blocks for our charity blocks, which we didn't choose to do this year. So Mimi, right there, is our representative for the Quilts of Valor. This is one of the quilts that she has finished. How many did you have?
This one was pieced. I got almost 400 blocks. And several people took blocks and Karen Price pieced this one. I've just finished quilting it and it will be awarded next month.
So how many quilts have you made so far out of all the blocks she made? Dozens?
Even know. Oh,
A
yeah.
bunch of quilts. So she
And I've still got quilts. I've still got blocks.
blocks to make. So
Thank you.
aren't you proud of yourselves for contributing
Thank
to
you so
Quilts of
much.
Valor?
I
Right?
have to admit, Mimi, I have a package of those blocks from 2 years ago. We'll get them done.
That's cool.
I don't know how many blocks got passed out, but some of us probably have some at our house.
And so don't worry, Quilts of Valor is an ongoing program. So when you get it made, give it to Mimi and she'll award it. Or if you want to make it out of your own fabric, there's people who,
Bring it
that's
here
their
and they can get hold of me if you want to donate one.
Bring
And I
it
will
together.
say, this started in 2003 and sometime in the next few weeks, we will be awarding our 300,000th Quilts of Valor.
nationally.
Is this awesome?
How do they determine who
And
gets them?
By
it's,
next year, we'll get
the reactions I get are worth
Yeah.
everything.
So Quilts of Valor go to,
Mimi Jones.
no, to which men or women, men and women? Which men and women do they go to? How do you choose who they go to? Any veteran,
People that request them.
people whose families say they could use
You
some
can
love
either go on the website
and it's a veteran.
and request one there and it will go to
The
a
chapter.
rep in the area where that person is. Or I can leave some tapes and
Yeah.
forms here.
So you can make one all by yourself. You don't have to do it as a group.
No.
But I have a friend, online friend, who, that's her pet charity. She makes Quilts of Valor constantly, gives them awards, gives them to the local thing. Some people do hospitals, or some people do different things,
Yeah.
or policemen, different things. But Quilts of Valor is a very excellent one to do, and they just award quilts to veterans. And I've seen they film the award. I've seen some of the films of when they award people, and some of those men and women, it just melt. They just like, oh, somebody loves us. We
Well,
did something good.
Think about the Vietnam vets that got it on when they came back. And that's my age group, so, you know.
And veterans from any of the wars or any of the services. So anyway, it's a good program. If you feel like being with a cause, it's not hard to find a cause to be with. So, and that's fun. And you say, what do you make? What do you do with all the quilts you make? Mostly we give them away. I'd rather give them away than sell them. It's not worth selling them usually because you can't pay what it's worth. So then we just
And
give
we've all
away.
given away so many quilts, grandma doesn't have a lot to show, because we all have.
Except we're selling some in the back. But $40 barely covers what? Not even the batting maybe, not the thread. It doesn't cover it. It's just to help them go out to the world to a good home. So, okay, so remember, I was gonna say something else, but I can't remember. So go have fun, shop, play. We'll see you at 2:30 for our last class. It's gonna be a good one, you guys.